Hey everybody, welcome back to the next video on functions. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how you can take a value from a function and use that in your scripts. Now in the last video, I basically introduced you guys to functions and we created our first function. And it didn't really do much, right? Like the function did its thing. It printed something to the page, but we really didn't do anything. Like we didn't return a value and then use that return value in our script, so to speak. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a function. We're going to make a yearly wage calculator, and then we're going to take the user's actual, like the return value, and use that in that script. And we're going to be learning about how we can return values in functions, essentially. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our function. Let's start off by declaring our name, and I'm going to call it yearly wage. And we'll start off here. And in this function, we're actually not going to have any parameters because we're going to base our parameters based upon what the user actually, their input. So we could use parameters to do the hourly wage and the hours per week. But we're going to actually let the user type that in to add a little bit more user input and whatnot, you know, to make it a little bit more flexible based on what the user is inputting, right? So we're just going to skip parameters in this one. So we'll start off by doing our code block. And the first thing we're going to do is hourly wage. So let's type in hourly wage. And this is going to be equal to how much money. Well, first for input. We'll go, how much money do you make per hour? Since we need to figure out how much money the actual person is making per hour. So let's add a space there. And we're actually going to have to save this as an integer before I forget, because we are going to be doing some calculation. And since, remember, it gets saved as a string by default, we need to put this at the start of this actually. So we'll go input, and then we'll wrap this here. So again, we'll input in the user, asking them how much to make per hour, saving it as an integer, and then save that into hourly wage. Next up, we need to figure out how many hours the user is working per week. Let's go hours per week is equal to int input, and then we'll go how many hours do you work per week? And once you figure out the user's hourly wage and the hours per week, we will multiply them. So we'll go make a new variable called weekly income. So weekly income equals hourly wage multiplied by hours per week. There's a little bit of math in this function. And then we will use the new keyword to return weekly income times 52, since there are 52 weeks in a year. So let's kind of go over this code here. So what we need to do is figure out the user's hourly wage, right? We need to figure out how many hours they work per week. We need to multiply those two together to get their weekly income, and then we multiply their weekly income by how many weeks there are in a year, which is 52. So it'll be 52 right here. Let's add a space there. And this return keyword will return this value of weekly income times 52, and we'll be able to use that. And we'll see, and I'll show you guys an example of how we can actually do that. So that's the end of the function there. So that's done. Next up, let's actually use this function. So we could go yearly wage, call our function, and then we can save that as a variable. So if we make a variable here, let's go, we'll call it users income is equal to yearly wage. So what this return value does is it will save this weekly income times 52 into our variable here. So since we're putting a variable here and we're saving yearly wage, since yearly wage is returning this value, it's getting stored into yearly wage. If we put a variable here at the start here, it's actually going to take that yearly wage and store it into this variable. So now whatever this outcome is here, the function will return it and store it into user's income. And again, we can make this variable whatever we want it to be. And then we will go print something along the lines of, you are currently making money sign user's income. Oops, spelled that wrong. User's income. Did I have a space there? No, I didn't. Okay. User's income, then go per year. And then we'll close that up. And I think that's everything we need in there. Let's go over this really quickly before we test. Actually, let's just test the code really quick to see if it works. How much money do you make per hour? So let's say I make $13 an hour. How many hours do I work per week? Let's say I work 20 hours, so, you know, part-time income. And it says you are currently making $13,520 per year. Let's test it again to make a little bit, see if it works. How much are you making per hour? Let's say the user's making $20 per hour. And how many hours do you work per week? Let's say I make work 40 hours a week, which is a pretty, you know, full-time income and full-time schedule. And it says I make $41,600 per year. So this is a pretty cool function, eh? Pretty nice little cool function. Seems to be working pretty good. And let's again kind of go through it just so you guys understand everything that's going on here. And again, if you guys don't get this, don't worry. You'll kind of get functions as you work. The hardest part about function is just understanding the syntax. Like, there's a lot of different things going on here. You just kind of gotta, you know, get used to it. So first of all, we're defining our function, and this is the name of our function. We're not passing any parameters. We could pass like an hourly wage and hours per week here and then declare them ourselves. But again, we want to input the user and then save that as an integer to make it a little bit more flexible on the fly. Then we're having hourly wage, so we're prompting the user, asking them how much money they make per hour, saving that in this variable. Then we're prompting them, asking them how many hours do they work per week, saving it in hours per week. Then we're simply making a new variable called weekly income to figure out their weekly income. And what we're doing is multiplying their hourly wage times hours per week to figure out their weekly income. And then we're returning the weekly income times 52 back to the function. Okay? So now yearly wage becomes whatever this is, whatever the return value is. And then we're here at the bottom here, when we actually call the function, we're saving the result into a new variable here. And again, you can make this variable whatever you want. It's kind of like when we input a user, like how we're in our hourly wage here, we're inputting the user, prompting them, and then whatever they type in gets returned into the input function, and we're saving it into the hourly wage. It kind of works the same way essentially, if you really think about it. And then of course we're printing, you are currently making money symbol, the user's total income per year. So this is a pretty cool little function, eh? And this is how you can use the return value in functions to return some kind of value and make your functions a little bit more flexible and do something with them, essentially. So now we're actually doing something with the return value of a function. So this is a really, you know, basic way of using this example, but it's a cool little function. And I hope you guys are starting to see, you know, the value of functions and how you can really, you know, create some cool scripts and things with functions. Of course, we're just kind of touching the surface, but as you get used to functions and whatnot and you use them more, you'll start to see some unique different ways. And just like the last lesson, what I really recommend you guys do is try to think of a function you can make yourself, like I did here, and try an example. And again, feel free to share it with everybody. Feel free to, you know, post in the comments and let us know what you come up with. We'd love to hear it. So when you guys are finished with this last lesson and you think you're ready to move on, come join me and we'll work more with functions in the next lecture.